to Three Wise Men, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Danny Holbrook, joined by Miles Holliday and Nate Garlock. Gentlemen, it's the prom season. It's track season. It's baseball season. It's softball season. You name it. It's springtime in the air.
Prom season.
I'm just glad you led with it. I thought he was going to ask us, like, are we going to?
I wanted to do like a big sign saying, Miles and Nate, will you go to prom with me like the kids do?
I thought like what? Disco ball's going to come down.
Oh, that'd be sweet, wouldn't it?
Mood lighting. Yeah. We were going to have to tell you no. We were waiting for somebody more popular to ask us.
You had the big collar, didn't you?
I did.
You did.
You had the velour suit.
You did. You had a blue tux with a dickie, right?
Yeah. I went up to my date and I said, "You're my destiny." Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Did you guys have cheesy theme names for your prom?
Enchantment Under the Sea.
Enchantment Under the Sea.
Easy, Marty McFly.
Marty McFly. Oh my gosh. I couldn't believe those guys got.
We'd like to thank all of our viewers if you stayed this long and you're still with us on the show. Thank you guys. We're getting back on track.
This is the best opening we've had.
Look, it's prom season and I love you guys. That's my way of saying be my date.
Well, I'm glad that's on tape forever. That'll never come back to haunt us, will it?
Can I wait a week to tell you?
Well, look, the girls tried to poison me with jelly beans tonight before the show, so yeah. It's a rough set around here.
Listen, I'm more excited about the wardrobe change we're all about to do before our interview today.
I know, right?
I'm super excited about it. We've never had a wardrobe change in the show before.
Well, you guys can do it over there. I'll do it in my dressing room.
It's exciting. Yeah.
I'm really excited to have Spencer Holbrook, the best, smartest Holbrook of all of them.
And finally. Get one with talent on the show.
I know.
Yeah, it would be nice.
And Tim May.
Tim May's great. I see Tim back there behind the counter. Yeah, he's back there.
Hey, guys.
Him and Spencer back there. So, all right, guys, let's get right to it. The Diamond Dave Bowen, best
He'll
thing
be
we
coming
saw
on too when we do the interview.
all week.
That's right. Dave Bowen's going to be
Dave is here.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to do the Diamond Dave Bowen best thing we saw all week, and we're going to start with you, Mr. Holliday.
First of all, Jack Rader, the defensive lineman at Bath High School. I don't know if you saw this or not, but pretty big deal. He's going to be going to Texas to take part in the All-American Showcase down there.
In Texas. Get along, little doggy.
Hey, that's a big deal. Like you are a big-time prospect. If you're going down to that, I'm hoping that's going to open some doorways for him where he's going to get some major offers after that because he's a heck of a good one. And then, Nate, I was so excited. The NFL draft was last weekend, and I know what a big fan of Will Howard you are. And when the Steelers took him in the 6th round, I said, man, that is great because now you hated Nate, you hated Will at Ohio State. Now you're going to hate him more as he plays quarterback for the Steelers, and he's going to beat your Bengals everything.
The only way that I'll be able to hate him now that he's at Pittsburgh is if Mike Tomlin waits till the day before the regular season starts to name him the starter. then I'll be right back in the same boat, man.
He called down to Ryan Day and said, when should I name it? But also Jack Sawyer. I mean, if there is a guy that has ever come out of the mold and said, where do you think that guy should play football in the NFL? It's the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? Yeah. There's no doubt that guy is going to be a huge fan favorite in Pittsburgh. How did he fall all the way to the 4th round?
It's a good question. I thought he'd go higher. I thought he'd be probably around 3. I was a little surprised he got out of there. But I'll tell you what, I have no love lost for the Steelers. I very rarely will say nice things about them. However, the way that they draft is it just makes you so frustrated when you watch somehow just solid player all the way down the draft. They never seem to have a miss.
Yeah, I think Jack Sawyer fallen a little bit. I think it had to do with the fact that those first 3 years were kind of rough in Columbus. He was a good player. He wasn't great. The last 2 years, he was sensational.
Last part of his junior season, he was fantastic and was really good last year. So we're at a restaurant, my lovely wife, Lexi, and I, and Will Howard gets drafted by the Steelers. And I see it on my phone because of our group chat, right? Kelsey first said it, and then she's like, yeah, he goes to the Steelers. And I yell, yes, Will Howard! In the middle of the restaurant, and Lexi was like, "You weren't that excited when I said yes." But sweetie, you're not Will Howard. Yeah. You can't throw passes.
This was a surprise. I expected you to say yes.
Yeah. And she didn't have near the year Will Howard had.
You didn't win a natty.
No. She just hung out with you. Nate, you're Diamond Dave Bowen.
Actually, I'll tell you what. I want to go last, if you don't mind.
Oh,
If you don't mind.
For me, guys, we talked about this a couple weeks ago about a team scoring in every event.
Why does he have to put his glasses on
To
for it?
talk, to speak. Look at my
He's
notes.
like,
In case I might need these.
Are you Ben Franklin?
There's a
He knows the
Assembly
camera-
Hall
no,
right here?
No, he knew the camera's about to push in. He's like, I need to look more distinguished.
Thank
Let
you.
me put my
No,
glasses
if I want to
on.
look distinguished, I do this. When I'm looking at you guys scolding it, I do this. I go,
It's George Costanza. Yeah. Oh, he's so smart. Look how smart he is.
Nathan, Miles, you boys need to listen.
He's going to be the wise man next year.
Yeah. Well, as a featured guest, I know that my time here is limited.
I hate you. We talked about this track team a couple weeks ago. It was Ottawa Glendorf, and you had mentioned that they scored in every event at the track meet.
Yeah.
Guys, Lincoln View's boys team did it again this week at the St. John's Invitational. They scored 183 points. That's ridiculous.
Save some of those.
They scored in all 17 events. So shout out to the Lincoln View boys track team.
That's fantastic.
The Lincoln View girls track team was second at that meet. They scored 152 points.
Second with
Unbelievable.
152.
Yes, well, we're going to talk about the team that got first because they're my team of the week this week.
They had more.
Yes, they did. And then my second one is I'm giving a shout out. And look, this show's all about sports. And
Sometimes.
my favorite
Occasionally.
holiday, Lexi. The Miss Lexi that we talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Lovely
Miles,
Lexi.
the lovely
Yeah, great.
Lexi.
Yeah.
Mrs. Holiday won the Toledo half mile, right?
She did not win it, but she
I was
did.
like, wow, she won it? That's incredible.
She ran it. No,
Glass
I
City
think
Marathon.
it's awesome
Yeah.
that one of you two takes physicality
Absolutely.
important in the home,
Yeah.
and she is leading that charge.
13.1 miles. She
Yes.
did it. I was very proud of her.
That's incredible.
But I deserve some credit too because I parked and had to walk over a mile to get to the finish line to be there for her.
So 13
and I
minutes
had to
is
get
what-
up early too, Nate.
Oh, yeah. It was an early start.
13 minutes is what she ran in it? What she said?
Yeah, she's an Olympic type
I
athlete.
think she looked at the possibility. She's like, you know what? A Saturday morning, a couple of hours out of the house.
Sunday
I'm going to
morning.
go. Yeah, I'm going to go. So good for her.
So the route goes right by our house. All right, so it's great. I got to put my chair out and watch her run by the house, and then I got to find a way to the finish line to get there for her at the finish line. But is there anything better than random people ringing cowbells at 6:30 in the morning on streets?
Oh,
in
yeah.
Chicago? Is there anything better than
When
that?
it wakes you up and bothers you, it really actually I read
So
that and
much
I
fun.
laughed so hard because I knew how grumpy you were. Even though you were out watching your wife, I knew it still bothered you so much.
Go Ron!
That people were out supporting other people,
the worst.
enjoying a day.
Yeah.
You're like, this is horrible. I hate you all.
Who wants to run that far? That's ridiculous.
And my
Done it a
third
few
thing,
times.
guys.
It's not fun. It makes no sense.
We had a national holiday this weekend in Roundhead. It was Roundhead Trash Day. Now, guys, have you ever seen? Listen to me, Nick.
It's just people trading stuff, isn't it?
Guys, this is the best part. It's grown men throwing big objects
am
into the dumpster, and it's so fun to watch people. And you're trying to
so
eat the
glad I
back.
went last.
Yeah.
so
Incoming porcelain toilet.
Oh, and he makes a big noise.
Yes,
Yeah.
incoming car battery. Incoming tires, which you're not allowed to throw away.
Do you have to yell what it is before you throw it?
Oh, yeah.
Because there's someone in there going
Yes,
through
there's
it, right?
someone in there
There's
going
always
through
someone
it.
going through
Right.
the dumpster.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like my brother or my cousins and stuff like that. Yeah,
that's
so
right.
it was great. Nate, you're up.
It's ironic that he's got a twin, and he said, "Yeah, it's my brother in the dumpster." Definitely, that way when we see pictures, he's like, "It's my brother. It's not me in the dumpster." Right?
I had
I
that.
can't believe they threw that away.
Yeah, I had the help taking my stuff away. Yeah.
All right. So for me, I do want to get a little serious for mine, and it's because you know.
scolded?
No. It's nothing.
He doesn't
but-
have glasses on.
No. So Bluffton had their invitational on track on
Yeah,
Friday night.
right.
Held it up at Bluffton College. It was a good event. Shawnee was up there, so my son was up there. So after our lacrosse game, went up there to watch him. And there was a different event that you typically don't see at
right.
track meets.
Yeah.
The Bluffton Invite held a mixed 4x2 relay.
Yeah, that's cool.
They did this in honor of Eli Jones. Eli Jones is a young man who unfortunately passed away about a year ago. He was a Bluffton High School student. He loved football, loved track, has a great family, was very grounded in his faith, and he really leaned on his relationship with God.
Yep.
And he just was a big inspiration. And if you've seen any Bluffton sports over the last year, there's been a lot of tributes to him.
rightfully so.
Yes, and so it's been a rough time for that community with his passing, and to be able to had that event. I know the family well, and for the young men and women for Bluffton who ran that, from my understanding, they were close friends of Eli.
Cool.
They had an opportunity to run in that event, to honor him, and just to do something in his memory. I thought that was really great for Bluffton. They wanted to have this event for him. And to make it even a little bit more special for me, like I said, I know the family, and very unexpectedly, and Shawnee did not know this. They had no way of knowing this, but because it was a little bit out of sorts, my son actually got to run in the relay. So it was even a little bit. So that was a great thing to see, and I really wanted to give Bluffton a shout out for that, and for the young men and women who ran in that relay in honor of Eli Jones. Just always nice to take a moment and be able to remember kids who leave an impact on their communities and on their schools, even when unfortunately they're not with us.
Whoever's idea that was, fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great job.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was it, and that was my only one. I thought that was a really special one, and that was the only one I wanted to highlight that one. Yep, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Yeah. It's interview time here on the Three Wise Men. We've got a couple of great guests with us today from Letterman Row, Tim May and Spencer Holbrook. Guys, thanks for spending some time with us.
Hey, anybody pays me, man, I show up early.
Wait a minute, what? Did you get told some wrong information? Well, thanks so much for coming, guys. We really appreciate it. Let's get right to it. Tim, look, everybody knows you.
Really?
What a career you've had. Let's start from the beginning. How did this whole thing take off? I mean, as a kid, did you want to be a sports writer?
Yeah.
Is that what you wanted to do? And look what you've done.
Well, no. Number one, I wanted to be the next Joe Namath at the University of Alabama. And I did get to 6'2" like him, but I not only was the slowest kid in my high school after we moved to Texas, I was also the skinniest. So football was not in my. I was not going to play, but I've loved football since I can remember. My dad took me to Alabama home games when I was a young kid with my older brother till we moved to Texas. My dad graduated from the University of Alabama, so you grew up in Alabama. You're going to have some love for football. Then you move to the most football-intense state in the country, which is Texas. No offense, and so yeah, I've always loved it. I've always wanted to be, what do you call it, a part of it in some form or fashion. And I got introduced to sports writing when I first started in junior college, and I luckily became, by happenstance, the sports editor of the Lufkin News in East Texas when I was 19.
Oh, wow.
So I was kind of like the Jim Neveau, of, I don't know if you know Jim Neveau.
Jimmy. We all do. Jim.
But
He's throwing names out there.
when I was 19, but my parents moved up here and to Ohio because my dad's business took him up here, and they kept trying to get me to move up here and go to finish college, because I was already a success who needed college. But when I was 22, I moved up here and went to The Ohio State University for like John Belushi for 7 years, of college down the toilet. But
You were a doctor.
yeah. But I went to work for the Columbus Dispatch right after I moved up here because I could do everything you needed to do to put out a paper, and stuck with them till I got to retirement age. Yeah. And then I started covering Ohio State in 1984, which is what you wanted me to get to, I'm sure. I've also covered every Indianapolis 500 since 1985, and got to cover the Masters one time.
Oh, nice.
1984 is one of the great highlights, something that's happened recently. But yeah, I've been covering Ohio State football in some form or fashion since 1984.
And Spencer, look, if it's no secret to everybody, you're my nephew.
What?
Yeah, right? I know.
What?
We've known since he was born that he was going to cover sports. And so what he's doing, everybody in our area knows that's what Spencer wanted to do. Let's talk about your journey, Spence.
Yeah, so when I was like 5, I remember somehow I woke up early one morning for school. My dad was watching SportsCenter. I decided that I was going to watch with them. I don't think I ever watched a cartoon in the morning before school again, just because it was always like, hey,
Wait a minute, SportsCenter, what's that?
let's watch the top 10, Dad. Let's see what's. And then from there, it was like, well, you're going to be on SportsCenter one day. I don't think that I necessarily need to do that, but I definitely knew that whether it was radio or TV or writing, that I was going to be involved somehow. And once I figured out that my height and weight were kind of secure, and it wasn't going to get any better than what I currently am, and I wasn't going to make it as a wide receiver or a center fielder or a point guard, it was, well, how can I stay involved a little bit like Tim? And I think a lot of us sports writers have that same realization at some point. I can't do this, so how can I stay involved? And I think that's where my journey kind of started, is realizing that I wasn't going to be an athlete. So how do I be connected to athletes and that led me to Ohio University, where I just Googled one day sports journalism, and that's the ad on Google, I guess, that popped up. I was like, well, that's close to home. And so I submitted my stuff to them. I got accepted into the journalism program, and everything has kind of taken off from there. Don't have the Rolodex of experience like Tim, but sports editor of a student newspaper, and then from there just got hired. And actually, Tim and I started at Letterman Row basically the same time. He retired from the Dispatch in 2018 and got a job at Letterman Row in 2019 in the spring.
Got pulled out of retirement is what happened.
And then
jerked out of retirement.
And I got hired to be full-time at Letterman Row in the spring of 2019. And so my entire career so far, I have worked alongside Tim until, here this spring, where we've kind of started to go our separate ways. And, so we've kind of been connected for a little while now.
Yeah. Hey, real quick anecdote, though. When I was a senior in high school, I left this part out. I went to the sponsor, they called him the sponsor of the Lufkin High School newspaper, said, I'd really like to write some stories, especially on football. And she goes, well, you should have started with us when you were a sophomore. You're too late.
Oh.
And moved on from there to Angelina College, where I wasn't, and then, got found, by the Lufkin News, but discovered. But yeah, my point is,
the cradle of reporters,
especially now, man, with websites and podcasts and .coms, you're never too late to chase your journalistic dream, if that's what it is.
Spencer, you told me before we got on air here, you know all about WSN because WSN kind of covered you in high school, huh?
A little bit, yeah. So I think it was the 2014 fall sports preview. They came out, set up a couple chairs. We did some stuff out at Upper Saddle Valley High School and previewed our rousing 4-6 season that was just a smashing success, and I was such a huge part of it. No, but it was
a lot better than any success he had when he was in high school playing football.
0-40.
4 years.
40?
It's only because I didn't throw the tight end.
Couldn't even say it. Ask questions. 40.
It happens, Tim. All right.
Is that the Northwestern or the Indiana or whatever?
You're the captain of a 4-6 Northwest Central Conference team. They come interview you, and you
Right.
think that's really cool, and it was awesome, and it's still on YouTube. And sometimes, my wife pulls up. It's like, hey, remember when you looked like this?
Tim,
All the right moves.
Tim, your first year in 1984, unbelievable football season for the Buckeyes. My favorite Buckeye, Keith Byers, tremendous year. I have said to this day, he got robbed of the Heisman Trophy. How special was that first year with him?
Well, number one, he always will tell you that Flutie is just keeping his trophy for him.
Correct, right.
He reminds him to dust it every now and then. But it was very special. And the interesting thing was that Keith suffered a high ankle sprain on the last play from scrimmage at Wisconsin that year. And they played Northwestern and Indiana the next two games before they hosted Michigan. And he would have had 200 yards by halftime in both of those games. Because believe me, don't get those teams mixed up with the current, especially Indiana team. So what really cost him the Heisman was suffering that high ankle sprain. He still scored a touchdown in the win over Michigan, which sent him to the Rose Bowl. But Doug Flutie's Hail Mary got it done. But it was very special because to this day, Keith Byers is one of the top 3 or 4 players I've ever covered from a talent standpoint, from a just a dominant standpoint. He set the school record for rushing yardage that year, and then along came another guy named Eddie George. You ever heard of him? Oh, you mean the head coach of Bowling Green? Yeah, that one. He came along 11 years later and busted Keith Byers' rushing record at Ohio State. But the bottom line was, it was very special. That team went to the Rose Bowl. It was really special because we were laughing about this before the spring game. The week before, remember when Ryan Day let the quarterbacks go live a few times? Yeah. You're sitting there going, are you kidding me? You're not doing this, really. But it's because none of those guys have played, yet. But 1984, the spring game, when I first started covering Ohio State, Mike Tomczak got tackled, suffered broke both bones in his lower right leg. I think it was his right leg, were broken. Right. Your starting quarterback in the spring game. He got back and did play. Wasn't quite the player he could have been and stuff. But it was just really funny reminiscing about how far that went. But it was really funny because that team went to the Rose Bowl, was the only team ever before the playoffs, the Big Ten playoffs started, the only team ever to to win the Big Ten outright with 2 losses in the Big Ten.
right.
And so they went to the Rose Bowl, got beat, 20-17 by USC. It was a hell of a game. It was Chris Carter's coming out party. Chris Spielman had a hell of a game. Both those guys were freshmen. And I'm just going, man, this is pretty cool. You get to go to the Rose Bowl every year. They didn't go back again until 96. But, I digress.
It's funny you bring that up because I was a freshman at Ohio State that year, and my roommate.
Thank you very much.
My roommate said, "Hey, let's go to Pasadena. Let's go to Pasadena."
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, they'll go while I'm still in college." That didn't happen.
Save your
did it?
pennies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was pretty funny because all kinds of things were. Earl Bruce was the head coach. He was never a beloved soul, and of course, what happened on down the line.
8-3 Earl.
Yeah, 8-3 Earl, 9-3 Earl.
Yes,
which is
9-3.
funny because after they beat Texas A&M in the Cotton Bowl after the '86 season, the end of the '86 season, I was the last guy leaving the locker room. I turned around, but I said, "By the way, Coach Bruce," I said, "you went 10-3." And I'm telling you, that was a hell of a team.
Yes,
and he
it
goes,
was.
Yeah, and he goes, "No more of this 9-3 blank beep, whatever you use on this program." And I went, "Yeah," and he had dressed up like Bugsy Malone, with
The
with his fedora and his hat and stuff.
headbands
And then he decided to stick with that the next year. And bless his heart, man, that year didn't go well.
No.
Chris Carter gets kicked off the team because of the agent situation. They had a chance to get him back, but Rick Bay didn't want to do that. Honor defend, Ohio and all that kind of baloney. And and they end up about the coat and tie and the fedora.
Yeah.
What was the name of the Iowa tight end that catches the ball down the right sideline and scores, and it's Ohio State's 3rd straight loss. And I will remember this till the day I die. I just happened to glance down the sideline, and Earl had on a jacket just like this. He took his jacket off and swung it around and then put it back on in about 2 seconds. And I'm just going, oh my God. I mean, it was the weirdest thing you ever saw. And I'm just going, uh-oh. And of course, then we ran a story in Sunday's paper saying he was getting fired.
Oh.
And they spent all day on Sunday saying that wasn't happening. And then on Monday it happened. And I got to tell you just real quick, I don't mean to hog this because here's the man. We had our own plane. We had our own planes at the Columbus Dispatch back then.
Whoa.
Oh yeah, because they own newspaper.
I don't have that.
You got a nice hoodie though.
Second or third richest family in Ohio owned us. The Wolf family, and they flew me up to Michigan on Monday for the pre-Michigan press conferences with Bo and all that stuff, and this is for internet. This is for Sports Center.
Yeah.
No, actually, Sports Center had already come along in 87. But I get home, but it's before cell phones, right? And I get home, and while I was in the air flying back from Michigan, what came down,
Yeah, right.
Earl got fired, and Rick Bay. And I get home, and my wife had left me a note on our counter that said, "Earl fired, Bay resigns, get on it."
The boss was talking.
Yeah, my boss was talking to me, talking loud and clear. But yeah, there's a million of those kind of stupid things.
Spencer, I'm considered the young guy in this group. All right. I mean, it just is. All right. Yeah. But and every now and then, in all of this that gets talked, I catch a good story here, or they got memories, or they say things. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't remember any of that stuff. Yeah. It kind of sounds like the same thing here. You get but a lot better stories already than what I get from this side of the table, without a doubt.
Wow.
But what is it like?
That's a shot.
Yeah, it is. But what's it like being able to learn underneath it? You said you guys have been connected pretty much ever since you got at Letterman Row. And I mean, obviously the wisdom and the experience that he's had. What's it been like to kind of learn?
Wisdom is a great word for it.
Yeah.
I will say that.
There's some teeth, get them cut out.
It's just like, I think one of the best things was a couple years ago, Big Ten Media Days, he calls, I'm on my way over there. He says, "Hey, you want to go to dinner?" Absolutely, we'll go to dinner. And I think we were sitting there for 3 hours.
No, you weren't.
And it was.
Oh, you mean?
But it was
I thought
3
you meant
hours.
waiting on me. It wasn't that long.
It was 3 hours of just story after story after story, and we're not going to be able to get to all of it tonight. But there's a story about Mike Tyson and Buster Douglas. There's a story about running into Bear Bryant's leg when he was a kid, running
him
on the
100-yard
field.
dash.
There's a story about, name any coach since 1984, and he's got a story about an assistant GA, head coach. It's just like you almost feel like you're sitting next to a history book, and I don't mean to date him like that, but it also is like I try to learn as much as I can so that way when somebody asks me about the program, it's not just, hey, since 2019, I can refer to this, or since 2002 when I started remembering watching Ohio State football, I can say like, well, I actually do remember, not from experience when this happened, but this is what I know happened because, it's not just reading it in the newspaper, it's hearing the person who wrote it talk about it. And so I think I try to be a sponge as much as I can, even when it's joking around or when he's trying to tell his story with some jokes in it. Like, you still try to sponge that up as much as you can.
You left out the anecdote of where I helped him carry his busted up concrete from his patio.
Yeah, I mean, and he'll do that too.
Left out
Like,
that part.
yeah, he'll do like this is who Tim is. So like, you get an insight. Everybody home gets an insight into who Tim is. I had a bunch of concrete I had a bunch of concrete we busted up at my house. We replaced our patio, and I didn't have a truck to take it to the dump. So the person I know in Columbus that has a truck. And so Tim
2008 Tundra, ladies and gentlemen.
Tim carries all this concrete to the dump. We dump it out, and he's like, "Do you have another load of concrete?" I think we took 2 or 3 loads of concrete to the dump.
You know how
That's
much
just
that
who Tim
cost
is.
me though? Because backing up, they made you back up in this part of the dump. Anyway, long story short, there was a bunch of stuff sticking up, and it busted my tailpipe. Whoa. And I didn't know it till I got home, so it cost me a lot of money to carry his concrete to the dump. But you know what? That's what you do for a friend.
Tim, let's talk about some of the memorable games you've seen in the shoe. And I go back, look, I'm a junkie, and I remember in 85.
You're going to have to prompt me because there's been a
Well,
bunch.
when Chuck Long brought the number 1 team in the country in Iowa,
dance.
the rain dance. I remember when Bobby Olive caught the catch against LSU and Tommy Hodson. I remember when Ty Streets beat Sean Springs down the sidelines.
Didn't happen.
I've been to a ton of them in the shoe. What's your most memorable game? And I know it's like asking your favorite kid, but just give me 1 or 2.
Yeah, the most memorable, there's a bunch. I mean, 2006, the game of the century, the first game of the century. What made that memorable was because we'd written all this stuff, preamble to the game. And you're sitting there on Friday, the hay is in the barn is what I like to call it, and you're just sitting there relaxing.
Exactly what he was going to say.
And then you get a phone call, and it was a phone call of a real good friend of mine who covers Michigan football, Angelique Shingelis. She goes, Timbo, she called me Timbo. Timbo, I just want to alert you that you're going to hear this in a minute, but Bo Schembechler has died. I said, what? Bo Schembechler. Mm-hmm. Bo Schembechler. The 100-yard war. Mm-hmm. I mean, what made the game, the 1970s between Woody and Bo, had died of a heart attack at a TV station. So I'm watching myself right now.
Elizabeth, I'm coming.
Yeah, in the restroom at the TV station. But anyway, that detail didn't need to be in there. But the bottom line was, then all of a sudden, this is one of the legendary coaches of all time. Forget about the game and stuff. And I remember, we had to do all kinds of little stories. And one of the stories I did was with one of the Ohio State. Ohio State has its own police force, and there was this one policeman for them who, anytime Bo came to town, this is after he retired from coaching, he was his bodyguard because Woody set that up a long time ago and stuff. And this guy called me. He goes, he had heard Bo had died. He called me out of the blue. He goes, you're going to want to know this story. And what had happened was, I'll cut it short because I know we don't have much time here. Woody was working on a book when he died in 1987, because he and Chris Carter, that whole fiasco all came within a week of each other. You're right. There's a million stories.
Yeah.
But anyway, the book. This was 2006. The book, the pages of the book were still sitting in the middle of Woody's desk when they were burying Woody. Like nobody had touched his office, in '87. And this cop took Bo over there and said, I thought you might want to see his office. It was in the ROTC building there, next to St. John Arena and the old hockey arena, Yep. And long story short, Bo sat down, started reading the book, and there was almost a whole chapter devoted to my relationship with Bo Schembechler and stuff. And Bo started crying. I mean, but it's just, to me, that's more as memorable as the game. But the game was up to the snuff of game of the century. You remember?
Yeah, sure.
Troy Smith hitting Robisky there in the corner of the end zone for the back shoulder throw that clinched it and all that kind of stuff. And I said, I remember writing Woody and Bo they went from fighting in having to throw in stuff at the field because the final score was like, what, 40 to 36? Yeah. I mean, that was not their kind of game. You know what I mean? And so the game had come blasphemy to them. But that sticks as much as anything. I mean, 2002, them clinching, the trip to the desert to take on Miami, just, right on down the line. But just that whole episode, you couldn't script it any weirder than Bo Schembechler dying the day before the game of the century.
Were you at Purdue for Holy Buckeye?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's still one of the most fantastic plays because you to really, truly have an appreciation for it. The wind was blowing strong out of the south that day, the whole day. And that drive was toward the south end. Right. And, Maurice Clarett had gone out of the game several times because he had a bad shoulder by then. He got the hell beat out of him as that season went on. But anyway, all of a sudden, Craig Krenzel steps up in the pocket. He was supposed to throw to Ben Hartsock, who got jumped, and sees Michael Jenkins man-to-man with one of Michael Jenkins' good friends from growing up in high school, and threw one hellacious pass, and Jenkins pulls it in and nonchalantly put the ball down and ran to the – but yes – but that season had about 8 of those games. Yeah, sure did. I mean, Gaduli almost beat them, down in Riverfront Stadium, I mean, with Cincinnati.
It's just crazy, though, because, in 20 years when Tim and I are talking about all of this, I think he and I are both going to remember very well watching Jack Sawyer run down the sideline against Texas, not because that game was fantastic. That game was kind of sloppy. And the teams just didn't play very well. The offenses, the defenses played well, but we were sitting directly beside each other down there in Jerry World, and I looked up and he was knocking the ball out, and then Tim, I thought my shoulder was going to fall off. He hits me and says, "Spence, look!" And there's Jack Sawyer just tumbling down and it's just like. And he looked immediately, as soon as the crowd started to die down, he said, "You just saw one of the great plays in Ohio State history." And so it was just,
It gives you chills thinking about it right now.
Yeah, so with all of those memories of all of these games, and at this point, I've done this for 6 or 7 years now, and I've seen a lot of these games, but that just kind of sticks out to me, especially because it's if he says it's one of the greats in Ohio State history, believe him, because he's been there. And so it's one of those things where you just know, he's saying it, I know it's true then.
Right. That was a season of memories in one football game because the Travion Henderson catching that screen out to the right, and you got Luke Montgomery, from Findlay, and Tegra Shabola and Carson Hinsman, the 2 tackles that stayed in, and they came out and were leading the way, and he picked his way through. They're running, the press box in Jerry World is in. I almost said a bad word, in the end zone. And they're running straight at me and Spence. I mean, or Henderson's running. I'm going, he's going to score. I mean, it was like, because, Ohio State needed a play to kind of get things back in order. And then at the end, how many great goal line stands did we see last year? 4 or 5?
Yeah.
One at Penn State. I mean, but that was a great goal line stand. I told everybody getting ready for this draft, if you have a question mark about Jack Sawyer, just watch that last play. Forget about the fact he tipped the pass on the previous play that caused an incompletion. On that last play, he beats Texas' best tackle, Cameron Williams, then hot trots it right to his former roommate, Quinn Ewers, knocks the ball out, and ball bounces right back up to him. He catches it and goes down the end. I mean,
slowest 83 yards in the history of the sport.
Yeah. I mean, Ryan Day almost beat him. But my point is, if you have any question whether you should draft this guy Just watch that play for 12 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah. And go, yes, because he did everything a great defensive end should do in the clutch.
In 20 years, when we look back at that 4-game run, how's it going to be remembered? Is it going to be like one of those things like everybody has to do it now? Or will it be one of those things that we're like, that was absolutely amazing? It's going to get better with like wine, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but the weird thing is I think everybody's already forgot about the Tennessee game because
Too bad.
they just kept getting better.
I'm still cold from that game. We
Yeah,
were there.
yeah.
No,
Nate,
Nate was
remember
there.
that?
Nate was there.
It was so cold.
We did a
allowed to
pregame
be
show for 2 hours before that on the radio.
I thought he did a pregame show and he had ice hanging off of his eyebrows coming up to the press box.
That was from all the Tennessee people spitting on me.
But at this point, at this point, we basically forget the Tennessee game because the Oregon game was
amazing.
I think as much cathartic as it was anything else.
That half of football rivaled the second half of the previous Rose Bowl we covered when Jackson Smith and Jigba and
just one of the
and
most
C.J. Stroud hooked up.
Surgical, methodical.
But you agree?
Yeah, I mean it was.
That was his major. It was like Ohio State playing. Name a bad MAC team.
And I don't.
Akron.
I don't ever try to say this because
And they played Akron.
I don't take what we do for granted at all. But like watching it on TV and it compared to being there in person, I mean, whatever you saw on TV and you thought it was a butt kicking, it was nothing compared to what it was in person because there were 60% Oregon fans there and they were loud and proud to begin that game.
Oh, yeah.
It was the Oregon sideline.
Number one seed.
The Oregon sideline looked like it had just seen unthinkable things. It was so distraught. And even when they scored at halftime and they're trying to tell themselves that they can make it, it was so clear who the better team was. And I think there's a tweet from a young strapping sports writer that said Ohio State's making Oregon number one team in the country look like Kent State.
Yeah.
Because they were. And I think that and the Texas game will always remember because
Thanks for calling me young. No. He was talking about himself.
the Texas game will remember because it was down to the wire. And the Notre Dame game will remember because third and Jeremiah is going to be kind of memorable. But
Yeah.
you just think about that Oregon game. It was in 20 years. That's why I think the defining moment is like they did that to a team with a 1 beside them, and like that. It's one of the 12 biggest beatdowns of a number one team ever, and it happened in a moment that they absolutely needed it.
Beating Tennessee was a harbinger of what was to come, but the explosion in that first half against Oregon put the whole world on notice. Who cares? The whole world, college football world. Plus, you got to see the setting sun on the San Gabriel Mountains. That was our bonus that day at the Rose Bowl. It's still one of the more great sights ever.
I got a call from him the morning of the Rose Bowl, and I've never been to the Rose. I've been to the Rose Bowl out in the parking lot. Never been to a game there.
Wow.
And I've
you were there.
Well, he called me, and he was FaceTiming me, and I'm sitting in my room, and I'm bawling. I'm crying because he's sharing that moment with me.
Yeah.
And I'll never be able to thank him enough for that because he knew how bad I wanted to be there.
Yeah.
That was something.
It was.
Special.
It's everything that you think it's going to be on whatever you see on TV, and they show that the big shot of the mountains with the sun coming down over it and everything, and it is just whatever you think it's going to be. And he tried to tell me and prep me for it.
I've said there's two things I've covered that were better than I thought they were going to be. One was the Masters. When I covered the Masters in 1984, Augusta National was so. I mean, it was already in my mind how great it was, but just to be there was just unbelievable. I mean,
I heard it's like a tradition like no others.
Yeah, exactly. Now it gets too holy moly there, in my opinion, but I'm talking about the atmosphere, what things look like. Even when it's raining, it's a cool place to be. And then the Rose Bowl, in 1984, first time I got to cover that, and to see the sun setting, in the San Gabriel Mountains in the third quarter, but just the whole setting was just. It comes to that. It does come to the level of surreal from the standpoint of wow. Meanwhile, UCLA plays all their home games there.
To 20,000 fans.
In front of 30 to, well, there may be more now with Nico Iamaleava.
Have you guys ever thought of, or can you remember a bigger swing in the way that a fan base has felt about Ohio State between that Michigan game and then that Tennessee win?
Shame on them, but we talked about, folks need to, the world has changed dramatically, and one of which is the game matters. But the game doesn't matter like it used to. Go ahead, Spence.
Yeah, it's the reality of what they have done to the sport. It's not what Ohio State wants that game to be. It's not what Michigan wants that game to be. It's what the sport has demanded regular season football is at this point. And so you can lose that game and still go win a national championship. You know, we thought maybe we would see them do that at some point, you know, in the 2022 season when they lost to Michigan, they got beat down. And they go, and if they beat Georgia, they would have won the national championship. And you think, like, man, that would have been so weird to try to do. And then now there's enough of that buffer where if you go do those kind of things, you go win the national championship after you beat Michigan, or after you lose to Michigan, like, you've got those 3 games of getting that taste out of your mouth. And so it is interesting, but, like, the fan base shift was pretty sudden, I think, because once you see once they beat Tennessee and the rumors started coming out, circulating a little bit about the team meeting and the way that the coaching staff, just as much as they did in that interview room on, I think, December 3rd or 4th, when Ryan Day kind of admitted defeat and kind of just said, like, yeah, we messed up. And, you know, to hear him do that in public is one thing, but to hear some of the things, even that haven't been reported still, of what happened in that meeting room with the team and what the team said to Coach Day and what Ryan reciprocated to them, I think the entire fan base, they start throwing it to Jeremiah there on the first drive of that Tennessee game.
Yeah.
You start to realize, like, okay, like, they did mess up, but you can start to forgive them if they continue to do this. And they just kept turning that dial up a little bit more and a little bit more. And by the end, it's like, okay, like, yeah, they messed up. November of 2025, you better not mess up again. But for 2024, I guess it's okay.
You're forgiven.
But it's interesting. I mean, I had Ryan address this on my little podcast, the Tim May Show, sitting in his office, and I told him, I said, you know, people, you know, coaches should study what you did. I mean, because it was kind of dangerous in a lot of ways when a coach goes in and sends all the other coaches out of the room and has the team in front of him and basically admits they screwed up in whatever form or fashion, game plan wise, because anybody could see that. But then it gives me goosebumps right now to think about how that team came together in that moment. In that moment, I'm talking about an hour and a half, 2 hours, because then he left the room and that team gathered itself, and that was a team replete with leadership. It was stunning, the stud leaders that were on that football team. And they took charge of the moment. Some of them young, some of them old. I mean, Caleb Downs was one of the younger guys, but he took charge. And it was almost, it was a textbook on how when you have a really good team and you have faith in what they're all about. And by the way, the spiritual component of that team is what came through in that meeting. Because guys didn't leave there throwing punches at each other. They left there after a kumbaya moment.
There was a prayer at the end of that meeting.
Exactly. And the bottom line was that team took ownership of itself. And, you know, it's the opposite. Remember in the Varsity Blues? John Boyd, you know, and they run him out of the locker room.
Buck Kilmer.
And he's loading his box while they come back and have a great victory. It was and I brought that up with Ryan. He said, you know, and he's not the kind of guy that's going to go like this. But clearly people will study that, you know, because every team has its buttons. But you got to. Urban Meyer was great at finding the buttons. Everybody thinks he's just an ogre, you know, you're blah, 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 blah. No, Urban Meyer psychologically was great at finding different teams' buttons and pushing them. And Ryan Day knew he had something. He just had to let these guys find it.
Well, you know, with Ryan Day too, it doesn't matter now because he won. He's a national champion. He's going to go down as an all-time great.
Man.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be an all-time great at Ohio State.
What a difference 4 weeks.
And that's exactly it. So it doesn't really matter. But I am curious. Everybody had him written off. If he lost to Tennessee, he wasn't even going to leave the building with a job. Is that really how it had gotten there, or is that just the fan base being, you know, the fan base?
I think, and I'll let Tim go second, I guess, to follow up. I think that Ross, I think it's important for you to follow up what I'm about to say.
I may just go ditto.
I think Ross Bjork and the athletic department had more patience with this than the fan base did, because I think they were kind of privy to what was going on in that meeting. And one of the things that Ryan Day continued to say was, we only get to tell the stories of this team if we win the national championship.
Correct.
And they were desperate to talk about what happened between the Michigan game and the Tennessee game, but they knew that it would sound like excuses or spoiled milk unless they won. Well, now they've won it 3 months ago yesterday, and then you say, okay, how do we tell this? And they've begun to, if you ask a player about that meeting and how things changed, they will answer it. They wouldn't answer it leading up to the Rose Bowl when we were talking to them at Media Day in the downtown Los Angeles hotel.
We talked about it a little bit before the Cotton Bowl, though, and then definitely for the national championship.
The Cotton Bowl, they began to open up because they started to kind of see the light of what was coming. And, maybe we can win a national championship. And then I think once they beat Texas, they knew they were going to win the title.
Right.
I really do. And so before the Notre Dame game, they were kind of starting to really open up about what was going on there. And now it's all out in the open. We know who talked. We know a lot of what was said. We know what happened. And so while the fan base was kind of sitting there like, I still don't know about this Coach Day guy, the team had fully, and I mean fully, bought back in on him. And the athletic department knew what happened behind those closed doors and knew what was coming down the pike and knew what this team was going to do in January. And so for me, as we're trying to uncover, what's going to happen if they do lose to Tennessee, you start to hear like, well, I don't think they're going to lose to Tennessee, guys. And it's like, well, what we just saw, and guys, I don't think they're going to. So there wasn't really much of a conversation around us of like, okay, who's going to replace Ryan Day? We didn't have to have those conversations because there was such a confidence that, hey, this is a guy who stood in front of the team. He admitted that he messed up, and now they're going to go win the national championship. And then,
what's really sad now, though, is that people think Ryan Day has put together a hell of a program. I mean,
has.
I'm talking about from the bottom up. I mean, he inherited, born on third base, whatever, that stupid line was from Jim Harbaugh. And now we're finding out that he was. Whatever. I got a bad analogy there. But the bottom line is that program is so ridiculously stacked right now with quality players, quality coaches, quality control coaches. I just want to say that. Right on down the line, training staff. I mean, it is the number one, in my opinion, football program in the country. Mm-hmm. Major college football program in the country. You could rank it right there with Georgia, Alabama, Texas. Maybe throw one more in there. Who else? Who would you throw in there? But the point is, no one's got their act together more than Ohio State does right now. And it was already like that before the Michigan game and after the Michigan game, if you follow my drift.
Right.
So do you throw all of that away and start with, some of the names they throw out for those openings just, drive you nuts. I'm not even going to bring them up. Like, you just plug one guy in there and it changes everything. Baloney. Ryan Day, and they finally got the wins they needed under, right? Final analysis is you do have to finally win when you have that kind of a program and everybody knows it's stacked, and they did get it done. And that'll be the interesting storyline next November is, can you finally beat Michigan?
Right.
Again, because he has beaten Michigan before.
did the title free you? And are you able to kind of go in there a little loose?
But we all know football games come down to guys making plays, just like basketball. Y'all were talking to Doug Etzler earlier before I walked in. Maybe I'll let the cat out of the bag there. Maybe you're not doing that, showing that until January. but it gets me about basketball because finally somebody's got to make a play. Somebody's got to fill up the hoop, right? Like with Houston. Houston was as good as the team that beat them this year, but didn't make the play at the end. You know what I mean? It finally comes down to putting the players in position to make the plays, and then those players making a play, but taking ownership of the situation. And that, to me, is what stood out. And the funny thing about this is last year's team, and Ryan Day has made a big point about this, has very little to do with this year's team and what you're going to see. You're going to see a team, if it does things correctly, mature in front of your eyes because it's a total different group of players in terms of leadership and everything else. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to go off on a rant, but I can't stand people that think you can change one man, change one driver of the vehicle, and that makes the difference because this guy has spent all this time, as Ross Bjork said, it's the process that matters. That's the buzzword now, the new buzzword in the country.
They are using that. A lot of these.
But everybody's using it now. It's crazy. Justin Thomas used it talking about finally winning again for the first time in 3 years, the process.
Well, Ryan Day definitely benefited from the college football playoff, right? I want to talk to you about another Buckeye coach. Didn't have the benefit of the college football playoff. What would John Cooper's career look like now if they had the college football playoff back then?
96, 98, 95. yeah, but definitely those 3 teams would have been in a college football playoff. A 12-team playoff, who knows? 98, that team was very good.
They beat Florida, I think.
96 was not supposed to be very good because 95, all those guys had left, including Eddie George. But Orlando Pace was back.
Yeah.
That was a hell of a football team, and they played 2 quarterbacks and got it done except for one game. You talked about Ty Streets catching that ball when Sean Springs tripped and on that crappy turf. But and when John Cooper tells that story, he makes it sound like that was the play of the game. That Ohio State was still leading 9-7. Yeah. Ohio State got beat. It started Joe Germain for the first time because the fans all wanted Joe Germain to be the quarterback, right, over Stan Jackson. He makes his first start, and they only scored 3 field goals all in the first half. That's what got him beat. But, yeah, those were a damn good team. 2015. That team should have been in the 14 playoff.
Right.
That was a better team than
Right,
2014. Excuse me, did I say 15? 2014, but 2015 was a better team than
It was.
2014.
It's a Michigan State loss.
It was,
Out of nowhere.
you look at
Kid from Lima, quarterback.
yeah. I don't, he covered those teams, but I mean, just look at 98.
Right.
Look at the national championship game from 98. You've got, who is that? Tennessee
and Florida State.
And Tennessee didn't have a very good passing game.
Tim Martin.
I didn't think they were.
Remember Florida State's quarterback was that.
Florida State's quarterback.
Marcus
Yeah.
Outzen.
Yeah, and so
Rooster.
like if there's a John Cooper Ohio State team in there, I think that's a team that's in a 12-team playoff. Is every single team is looking at why are they an 8 seed? Almost like this
Right.
Ohio State team.
Yes.
You lose 13-10 in a fluke Michigan game, and then Oregon is looking behind them on the bracket saying, we got to play those guys again?
Yeah.
If you would have told Dan.
Next round, baby.
We were there at New Year's Eve. Dan Lanning standing there talking to Ryan Day, and Ryan had this smile on his face, and Lanning looked like he was locked in, and everybody coming out of that press conference in that media room was Lanning looks ready. He knows they're about to beat Ohio. And I said, no, Ryan looks ready because they know, like,
The 12th man on the field had been addressed.
That's what,
That's right.
But that's what those coaches, I think, would have felt like seeing Ohio State
at the time.
back in the bracket.
Oh, yeah.
In 95 and 96 and 98. Like, you don't want to see that team again if you had to see them again, or you don't want to see that team for the first time. They'd have been hungry after a Michigan loss.
Yep.
Jim Tressel probably doesn't exist if there's a 12-team playoffs back
Yeah,
then.
because
That's a great point.
Cooper probably would have had a long. We might be going to the John Cooper Athletic Center every day.
You know what, guys? It's unfortunate because he is the second winningest coach in Ohio State football history.
People forget that.
And that close. And like we're talking about Ryan Day, like he invented bread now, right?
It's good bread.
But back then his team would not have made the we were talking about they didn't even make the Big Ten championship game.
Right. Yeah.
I mean they would not have made the playoff, and or there wasn't a playoff in '98. I mean it was 98 was the first year of the BCS. Because up until then, the Big Ten and the Pac-12 weren't part of it.
He was voting on the national championship until 1990.
I remember
that's awesome.
84. Yeah, I voted in the AP poll, for a long time, and like my first year, I definitely did. I cast my ballot for Brigham Young. Brigham Young won the national championship.
They beat Michigan.
And then the next year they played Ohio State in the Citrus Bowl.
Yeah, I remember that.
And who scored the only touchdown in that game?
Ooh. It's like a 10-7 game,
Remember,
wasn't it?
Chris Carter was on that.
10-3
Yeah.
game.
Chris Carter was on that. I'm talking about for Ohio State. Chris Carter was on, whatever the score was, but Chris Carter was on that team. So was Jim Carsados. The answer is Larry Kolick, middle guard. With an interception return.
And Jim Carsado just passed away.
He did, yeah.
Bless his heart.
I love
He's
Jimmy.
waiting to get in.
Yeah, this has been
Sorry,
great.
Dave.
Your enthusiasm's coming through. I'm ready for the Texas game right now.
Just don't go, Dave. Don't go to the game, Dave.
Yeah, I'm 1-5 in live Michigan games, so I'm right up there. But
Wow.
speaking of which, then, with your enthusiasm and everything, what's been the toughest Ohio State story you've ever had to write?
Did I just get ashen?
Yeah.
And sullen?
Yeah.
Oh, it's got to be Memorial Day 2011, right?
Yeah. Memorial Day 2011, I covered the Indianapolis 500 the day before, and I'd already written a bunch of stuff because we had it on good authority that Jim Tressel was going to, well, as they say, I think one part of the school said he retired, the other part said he resigned, but basically he was fired. And I came home from the Indianapolis 500 and already sent a bunch of stuff in, and I slept for like 2 hours and then drove to the Woody Hayes Athletic Center parking lot where the players and coaches went in. I was there by 7 a.m. and it came down. The cleaver came down at like 8, and so that was a long. That wasn't just a long day. That was a long, summer. But I tell you what, 2018 when the whole Urban Meyer stuff happened, which I thought was incredibly unfortunate. I won't get into details of where I came down, except I was relieved of duty from the standpoint of covering the nuts and bolts of the accusations that had been cast by somebody, because everybody who was around the team knew that 99% of it was BS. But, major college sports are like a lot of things in life now. There are a lot of PR involved. And if something smells bad and looks bad, just throw the refrigerator away. Instead of cleaning out the refrigerator. And but the whole Urban Meyer thing, and then he had that weight on his shoulders the whole season. He was suspended for 3 games, and Ryan Day, his first 3 wins were during that time, so that was tough the whole year. And I remember Urban kept asking me how, if he was to leave, how would he be remembered? And I go, what's his legacy? And I go, man, you won a national championship, 4 years ago. I mean, your winning percentage is, Newt Rockney, type stuff. I mean, you're going to be remembered, and your legacy is going to be fine. And finally, it got down to basically there was something that couldn't be mended there between him and the president of the university. And I kept telling him, stick around. That president of the university is not going to be around that much longer. And I was really counseling him a little bit, and behind the scenes, so to speak. And he didn't want to do it. Because Urban, man, he takes everything personal. He takes everything personal. Yeah. And good for him. That's one of the reasons he was so successful as a coach. And so that was tough. That was just tough the whole year. I mean, it was stupid how a lot of those things go down. But, every coach at Ohio State, Urban's the first one that I've covered, who really basically did resign, but he felt a little bit of pressure, just didn't want to kind of do it anymore at that moment. So, but yeah, anytime you see a guy lose a job, you know how much, forget about what they're making, because they used to not make that much. But Earl Bruce busted his butt for that university. Woody Hayes got fired. People forget that, Now, he had outlived his welcome to a certain extent based on the way things went down. That's another story for me that next time I'm on here I'll tell. But yeah,
same rate.
But every one of these guys, they called it the graveyard of coaches back in the 30s and 40s when Francis Schmidt got fired, and then Paul Brown came, won a national championship, went to World War II. Bixler and all those guys that followed him. It became Wes Fessler, an alum. But really, every coach I've covered has had a pretty long tenure, but it's always ended weirdly, And it was it going to happen for Ryan Day if they didn't beat Tennessee? I don't think so. But I'm telling you,
could have been a step that way.
Money talks and loyalty walks sometimes.
Well, Miles has got some rapid-fire questions for you guys before we wrap this up.
Are we supposed to give rapid answers?
I don't know if that's possible, Tim. I don't know if that's possible.
I'm just telling you.
We're at the end of the show, Tim.
Ohio State's an interesting animal. Let's just leave it at that.
All right, guys. Woody Hayes or Earl Bruce, 2 of the most fiery coaches ever at Ohio State, right? Who wins in a fist fight?
Woody.
Woody already got the first punch in.
Woody until like his last couple of 3 or 4 years, but Woody definitely. You know why? Because I think Earl would let him hit him. Earl would let Woody hit him.
At least 3 times.
Yeah. Earl loved Woody Hayes.
As long as Charlie Bauman doesn't tag in, right?
Pass. All he had to do is drop the pass.
That's right, right. He taunted
but
us.
I always tell everybody he didn't hit him here, and he didn't hit him here. He hit him right there.
Woody knew what he was doing.
I mean, Kid Fritz and I talked about that a lot.
Now, what makes the Rose Bowl so magical?
It's the sunset. I don't like that. I don't think you need to say much else. I mean,
Because
the grass is greener. Ryan Day said it before the Rose Bowl. He said, we're excited to go to the Rose Bowl because the grass is greener and the sky is bluer.
Yeah.
There's not much else to say.
Even when it rains, it usually quits and sun comes out. What makes it is the granddaddy of all bowl games for a reason. It's also the granddaddy, really, of what's happened in major college football now with the playoff and stuff, because postseason. Hey, let's see these two. Let's see these two teams play.
Right.
Let's see these two teams play. Right. Now let's see these 4. Now let's see these 12. But for a lot of reasons. But boy, you can't beat the setting.
Who's more beloved by Buckeye Nation, Will Howard or Jack Sawyer?
Ooh, I think it's Jack Sawyer.
That's not fair, because one's on offense, one's on defense.
I'll go Jack Sawyer, but I also think that there are a lot of people who are waiting for Will Howard's autograph at the spring game.
Yes. You can't beat 3rd and 11
right
in the championship game. You sure as hell can't beat, off the edge, 83 yards, touchdown, seal the deal, because people forget Notre Dame had a chance to tie the game there.
They did.
And Jack Sawyer and the defense took care of business. So I would pick one on offense, one on defense, because these guys don't go both ways.
All right. Worst place in the Big Ten to go?
I'll say Michigan State.
Really?
Really?
I know what he's going to say.
Maybe you don't, but I've never enjoyed going to Penn State.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's terrible.
Northwestern.
It's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
No, Northwestern, it was a crappy stadium. Matter of fact,
Dykes.
now, it was really funny last year when they played Wrigley Field. They had 41,000 tickets sold.
Yeah, we were there.
Yeah. 35,000 were at least 35,000 were Ohio State fans.
It was. I didn't even see any Northwestern fans.
Yeah,
Michigan State.
they had their band there.
You got paid for
I got
the
a
food
picture with
in
the
the
in the
press box.
outfield.
Do you
I had
really?
the band doing the OH.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it good?
No,
Wait, what did you just say?
I said Michigan State. You have to pay for the food in the press box.
Oh yeah, well yeah.
And the weather's never good. I've never been to a good weather game at Michigan State.
You know what? When you go to Michigan State, I got to admit, if you feel like even with the new press box and everything, you still feel like you're sitting in a refrigerator. I didn't mean to bring a refrigerator back into the conversation again.
He loves refrigerators.
Dude, I used to deliver them, for Pearson Furniture in Lufkin, Lufkin, Texas. Yeah. But anyway, but Michigan State, it always seems, for want of another term, sort of like a sterile place. And then you keep telling yourself, that's where they played that game in 1966.
All right.
Notre Dame, Michigan State, and you're going, okay, that gives it some character.
No.
Like old Cleveland Stadium was a dump.
It stinks.
If Bob Feller and Jim Brown hadn't played there, nobody would have cared.
Our good friend Bucknut, he hates Penn State too, because he said they run up and knock him down as he's walking into the stadium.
It's just Penn State's in the middle of nowhere. They overcharge for hotels there times 10.
Yeah.
The creamery's good though.
Well, yeah, if you get in a long line, it's a place you don't want to stay that night. So I always bust rear end and come home. Anyway, we had our own planes. That was a lot better.
Last one for you.
In and out, baby.
Last one, okay? Who can grow a better beard, Tim May or Spencer Holbrook?
Oh, I don't know. I've never seen Tim with a full
Clearly
beard.
Spencer, because this is a product of many years. He's like Ryan Day. He could probably grow one in 2 days.
No dye either. Ryan doesn't dye either. Damn. Ryan and I both need
I'm
to
having nothing better to do in your life than that guy, Clay Travis, taking a shot.
Yeah,
at
right.
Ryan Day's beard because his beloved team, Tennessee, has just lost its quarterback in the most ridiculous of ways. Right?
Yep.
And so he
Rapid
takes a shot
fire.
at Ryan Day.
Nico may be coming back to the shoe this year, right? You
Yeah,
said
November.
Yeah.
In November.
Hey, the thing about Nico?
Neal and North.
Thing about Nico is I don't like the way that went down at all. But without him, they would have really gotten tattooed.
Yeah.
I mean, they had nothing but Nico that
Yeah,
night.
he made a lot of plays with his legs.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you. Look, before you go, Tim, can we get you to come back next football season?
Sure. I'm semi-retired.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We know Spencer will come back. But
I
can
have
we get you
irons
to-
in the fire, but I'm semi-retired. I go from roundup to roundup and help brand cattle. So
I'll tell you what, if you come back up, we'll show you our refrigerator.
One quick anecdote.
Yeah.
So me and my buddy Bobby Austin, we load a refrigerator on the back of a flatbed truck, go all the way out like from Lufkin to Kelty's, which was about 30 miles, and we get there, and Bobby was in charge of securing the refrigerator before we put it on the thing, and I was I was in charge of like strapping it to the flatbed. We get there, and he had not put tape on the upper door, and so the whole way there it had gone. So we drove all the way out there, and then drove all the way back with that refrigerator.
You've been watching Tim's Appliance Hour. Tim, Spencer, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate you guys coming on the show. You're always welcome.
Thanks for having us, guys.
I enjoyed
This is
it.
awesome, guys. Thanks.
Here we are, guys, back in the studio after a great interview with Spencer Holbrook
We left
and
the
Tim
studio
May.
to go do that one?
Well, there was some. Yeah, we made some.
Well, he
moves.
means we left to change clothes.
okay.
I get back in my
I'm with
comfortable
you.
clothes.
I'm
Went
with
from
you.
a blue WSN to a black WSN.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know.
I like that
it's
you
fine.
wear elastic waistbands.
Well,
a
there was a
lot.
painting contest between interviews, so I thought that was nice.
Tim was amazing,
Tim
wasn't
was
he?
amazing. He's so funny. I could sit there and listen to him for 2 hours. We almost did.
I could too. I mean, I hope he writes a book someday about his experience of covering Ohio State because the stories he has are amazing. I was captivated by both of them. Of course, we love the Buckeyes, right? But couldn't we talk to them about 2-3 more hours?
And when it wasn't even just the Ohio State stuff, even when we went off air, he started telling some stories.
I
and it's the
know.
other sports and the
Yeah.
other things that he's been around and experienced. I mean, it is so fascinating when you get to hear those types of stories and the behind the scenes type stuff.
My favorite
It's
part of the
amazing.
interview was when I asked him if he would come back in next football season, and he was taken aback that we would have him come back in.
That was pretty cool.
I guess
that
if you wanted
was
to.
cool.
And with Spencer, I'm gonna be a little bit sentimental
No,
here.
really? Why?
Yeah, well,
Why?
you know what? He makes our family proud.
Oh,
and he's done a great
Finally,
job.
somebody needs to.
Somebody in this media
Somebody had to
world
carry the
had to.
mantle, right? Yeah. You got my brother, who's a minister, making mom and dad proud. I'm whatever I am. The
black sheep.
Spencer, yeah. But we've been an Ohio State family our whole life, and we've gathered for every Ohio State game, and we get together for holidays. And this is what Spencer's wanted to do his whole life. And he really, really hit a home run out of college when he got the job with Letterman Row.
Absolutely.
And you guys know, and I don't know if you do know this, he did an internship with the Cleveland Browns. He did an internship with Bleacher Report. I mean, he's done some big things, and he's taken this role, and he's really done a great job with it.
I like the fact, too, that a lot of guys probably would not value the fact that they're working with Tim May. Right? Because they look at it as like, I want to get in front of him. Like, no, you could tell there's a lot of respect there. And how could you not? Because Tim May, an absolute legend.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Guys, let's take a look. Who is our Stolly Superstar and our Stolly Sensational Team of the Week? We'll start with you, mate.
Okay, I'm going to start for my Stolly Superstar.
I said mate.
You did say mate. I'm with you. I got it.
Mate. Nobody called
Well,
him.
we try to ignore the behind-the-scenes inside joke stuff.
Hey, have a
best
jelly
we
bean,
can.
mate.
Yeah. No, so for me, my Stolly Superstar is going to be Carter Daly, a pitcher from Shawnee. He pitched 6 1/3 one-hit baseball earlier this week against LCC in a 3-1 win. He threw right around 125 pitches in that game. Wow. The big deal with that is prior to this game, he'd been having some arm pain, and he'd been limited to just 15 pitches all in relief.
Wow.
And then he comes out for a Shawnee team really struggling this year, trying to find their footing and get things going. They've really missed him on the mound. He throws in the upper 80s. He's college prospect. I mean, here's my fastball, see if you can hit it. Most people can't. He had 9 strikeouts in that game. He pitched a great game for a very big victory for Shawnee. They needed that one, knocking off LCC. So he's my Stolly Superstar of the Week. And for my Stolly Sensational Team of the Week, I'm going to stay on the ball diamond, and I'm going to go with Elida. Elida knocked off Bath 6-4. It was Bath's first WBL loss.
Oh, that's a big one.
The Elida baseball team now, they're 10-5 overall. They're 3-2 in the WBL. They are doing it with 5 starting freshmen.
Oh,
They have
really cool.
They had second baseman Jack Doherty, shortstop Colton Graham, first baseman Gavin Tickle, third baseman Jonas Snyder. For those of you keeping track, that's the entire infield. Their whole infield is freshmen. And then center fielder Ben Adcock. Adcock actually made a diving behind, going back away from the plate, back to the pitcher's mound catch to end that game to preserve that
That's
victory.
really
So they're doing all of this, and they're having this type of season with 5 guys in that lineup playing their first, getting their first taste of varsity baseball. Very, very impressive. That Elida program on their way up.
if I coached baseball at Elida, I'd recruit Parker Krim. And I'd put the big herd at the plate. Could you imagine how far he could hit a baseball?
I just have him standing there with a baseball bat, just looking at me.
You're going to walk me.
Make him catch her and be like, who's going to try to cross the plate? Who's trying to cross the plate?
Well, those were really good, Nate. I went with Carter Stevens of Lincoln View in their 17-0 win over Pandora Gilboa. One of those days that everything's going right for you as a hitter. 3 for 3, hit a home run, and oh yeah, by the way, 5 RBIs. So just one of those perfect days. A day that Carter Stevens is going to remember for the rest of his life for Lincoln View. And then my team of the week, Defiance Baseball. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but they got a pretty good tradition over there with
They
baseball.
a pitcher or two that comes
Yeah,
through.
once in a
They
while.
came this
Once in a
time,
while.
though, don't they?
They do. They got a big one coming up this week. But if you ever go there on the board outside the press box, they have a giant board of everybody that's thrown over 90 miles an hour in their program. If you ever go, it's amazing how many names are on there. But they had the big PBR Classic this past weekend, and Defiance doesn't shy away from playing anybody, right? So at the PBR Classic, they took on number 2 in the state of Michigan, Orchard Lake St. Mary's, and they beat them 3-2. So I always like when programs are always looking to play good quality teams, not always just scheduling wins, and Defiance does that.
Well, I like when they have a professional bull riding tournament up there. Anyways.
PBR
That's
is
awesome.
amazing.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
I didn't
8
know they did
seconds,
that
Danny.
there.
8 seconds.
Yeah, hang on, Lane.
Yeah.
Hang on. Okay, guys, my Stolly Superstar of the Week is we're going back to the track. And Delphos St. John's long distance runner, Katie Donaldson. Not only did she win the 1600, she won the 3200 at the Delphos St. John's Invitational. Now, look,
amazing. That's absolutely amazing.
You can win 100 to 200, maybe the long jump, and you're
Right.
like, that's pretty good. You get a little time in between, but running the mile and the 2 mile, and she runs a 5:46 and a 12:20.
5:46.
Yeah, 5:46 and a 12:20. Those are pretty impressive. She's my Stolly Sensational Superstar of the Week, and my team of the week. I got 2 of them. I've got the Delphos St. John's girls who won the Invitational, and the Lincoln View boys who won the Invitational.
Very nice.
Yeah,
great.
So, yeah, absolutely awesome stuff.
It's nice finally starting to get some nice weather, so we're starting
Yeah,
to
I
get all
know,
these
right?
spring games in finally. Baseball, softball, all the track meets. I mean, Friday night was a little dicey, but they still got
That's
some
right.
things
You
in. Yeah.
you had lacrosse, and what was the weather like there on Friday night?
It was a monsoon. It was an absolute monsoon. The only thing ever canceling us is lightning. There was none, unfortunately. Kept asking the athletic trainer, "You got any on the radar?" You got any? Meanwhile, raining sideways, it's just drenched. And then we went up to Bluffton to watch the end of the track meet, and it was like, why try to get dry? We just stayed wet. It was fine. So.
Guys, let's go back in a sports season to basketball. Let's look at Buckeye basketball. Last week, Sean Stewart, the former 5-star recruit out of Duke University who played at Ohio State this year and started 31 games, which, yeah, that's another subject. He's transferring out. Let's talk a little bit about that, and let's talk about Jake Diebler and what he's learning from all this transfer movement.
Boy, who's going to miss free throws now that Sean Stewart's
I know,
gone?
right? Yeah.
It was painful to watch. How is a guy ever a 5-star in high school and that painful at shooting free throws, right? I think 51% on the year is what he was at. Tremendous rebounder, but were you surprised at how small he was as a power forward when he first came to Ohio State, right?
I was surprised at how timid he was
Yeah,
at times
exactly.
coming out of Duke. And, you know, the story was he left Duke because of playing time. And you wondered about this. Well, he comes to Ohio State and he starts 31 games. So he ain't leaving Ohio State because of playing time.
Can't score.
Yeah, right. He
Yeah.
can't score.
Can't create his own
And I
points.
think you said it a couple weeks ago. I don't think he's going to make as much money this year as he did last year.
I'm wondering if that was part of the conversation, right?
Right.
Ohio State, hey, it was budget cut time. Sean, we gave you a lot of money. We don't think you're worth that money, right? There's a reason why, I think Duke had buyer's remorse, and they said, Sean, maybe you need to go, and now Ohio State's doing. Where does that guy wind up?
Well, you look at Aaron Bradshaw, and he ends up at Memphis,
Boy,
which is really bizarre. but-
That's Central casting right there,
I
isn't
know,
it?
right? Yeah, with Anthony Hardaway.
Oh my
and
gosh,
yeah.
it's a perfect fit.
I don't know. I would look at him to maybe. Is he a mid-major guy? Is he a MAC guy?
He's not going to go there, though. You're not going from Duke. I mean, that backslide, Duke, Ohio State, MAC. That's not going to happen. I don't think he'll end up somewhere.
take a flyer on
Yes, he'll mainly because of where he's been. He'll be able to tie Duke to his name. He'll be able to tie Ohio State to his name. He'll get one more chance at a Power 4 school. It'll be a lower level.
I could see him at Dayton.
Yeah.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
They lose Zed Key, who played a lot of minutes. He could fill that role for him.
Yeah, I see him like at a Vanderbilt or a lower tiered
He's not
school.
getting into Vanderbilt.
Well, you know what I'm saying? A lower tiered school in a Power 4 conference,
Okay.
Someplace, Minnesota, someplace like that.
I think he
you know?
goes out west, honestly. I think
Could
he's
be.
just going to try the
Pepperdine.
different coast.
Yeah.
See him at like a Washington State.
What do you think Jake Diebler's learning from the transfer portal, guys?
I wonder if we're going to go after high-profile guys anymore in the portal. It looks like all the guys that were brought in the portal are kind of Ohio-based guys, first and foremost, and maybe guys that are going to work and grind and win basketball basketball games that way. I mean, you hear about the guys that they've talked to, the guys that they brought in. These are not top-tier portal guys. Last year they spent a lot of money with Bradshaw and Stewart. I don't think that's going to be the formula anymore.
Well, we talked about this last week some, and I think the biggest thing that he's probably learned is I don't have to get somebody who's out of a blue blood, right? I don't need somebody out of Duke.
Blue blood waste.
I don't need somebody out of just because that's where they got signed out of college doesn't mean it's going to translate. They're leaving for a reason, and hopefully, and that's why I think with the signings that we've had. When you get Cups out of Indiana, and we talked about the kid coming from Wright State and these other guys, they don't. You have to find the right fit for your program. You got to find the guys that you can plug into what you need. It's a need thing, not a they're high profile. They were a 4 or 5 star coming out of high school. Maybe it just didn't work at Duke, or maybe it just didn't work out at Kentucky. You don't have to go and chase those guys. Go find the guys that can fill the roles that you need to fill in your program, regardless of where that comes from.
But guys, what makes the difference between a Devin Royal who takes his time, who takes freshman minutes, takes him into sophomore year, becomes a really good player as a sophomore, and now he's the leader of this team? What's the difference between him and a guy that says, you know what, I've been here a year, I'm out?
Well, I think that's easy.
He's a Columbus kid.
Well, it's not even that. I think you just look around at who they're surrounding themselves with. The advisors to these kids now. I think the ones who are giving these kids the best advice and telling them that it's not all instant gratification. Sometimes you got to stick things out. Look at the landscape. What's going to be best for you? Not maybe this very second, but maybe a month from now, next season. And that's not what's happening. You're getting a lot of these kids, a lot of people in their ear that's money chasing, and so they're just chasing the dollar.
Right.
And that means that's why you got kids going 4, 5, 6 different programs.
Sure.
Instead of, this is where I need to be. This is a good situation, good coach, good foundation, good school.
You'll develop.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm watching the draft this weekend, Miles, and I look at Cam Ward, and they just kept beating the same drum. He went to Incarnate Word, he went to Washington State, he went to Miami. Now he's the #1 draft pick, and I'm thinking, this isn't
not
helping.
always the path.
I know, but this isn't helping. Now kids are going, you know what, I've been to 3 schools, but if I go to the 4th school or the 5th school, I just don't. I know I'm old school. And I know
but
I'm
it doesn't.
guy,
but it's.
Did you say old?
Yes.
You look at the exact opposite, and you look at a guy like who Cincinnati drafted in the 2nd round, the linebacker Demetrius Knight Jr. That's a kid who stayed at Georgia Tech for 4 years, did his 4 years there, then decided he wasn't ready to be done, had some COVID time and red shirt and things like that. He plays for Charleston, gets a year there. His profile goes back up. He develops a little bit more. Then he ends up at South Carolina at SEC, where he got some NIL money, helped his family out. And then he's a 2nd-round draft where he'll come immediately into a pro team and probably be a starter for him this season. There's also that path. You don't have to hop. But if you do, let yourself develop a little bit. Even if you look at here, Austin Parks locally, right? Austin goes to Ohio State. It didn't work out right away, but he didn't leave immediately, right?
No,
he stayed. He gave it a couple of years. He looked at the landscape of it, decided he was going to have a better chance doing whatever it is that was best for him somewhere else. Now he's up at Toledo. Now we don't know what the future will hold for Austin, but it wasn't like he got his first whiff of, this didn't work for me and I'm out now.
The biggest concern I have, though, right? You look at the Ohio State Buckeye football team, right? It is 2-tiered. You have Ryan Day and the coaching staff that run the team during the season, right? But then you have the guys that are the talent evaluators, and they go to Ryan. Here's the top kids that we have at quarterback. Then Ryan goes down and he pairs that wrist. I like this down to 3 guys. We're going to go after these guys, right? Who's evaluating the talent and the prospects for the Buckeye basketball program? Because we've really swung and missed a great deal. Do we have a general manager that does this for Diebler, says, Coach, here's the best guys? Or is it all just Diebler evaluating all the talent that he wants to try and acquire?
Well, I mean, I think personally in some of this, though, is also you can say here's the best talent, but that doesn't really mean anything because Ohio State is playing with a dollar amount that is significantly less than some other programs, and they don't have the pedigree either of, hey, we're Ohio State, we want you to play basketball, compared to, hey, we're Duke, we want you to come play basketball. They're already several behind.
They're already
behind the eight ball several different times when they go to do that. So sometimes you have to take those swings and hope that maybe you get lucky.
If there was a kid that is a top-tier kid and he was considering Ohio State, don't you believe if Diebler went to the NIL collectives and said, hey, we got a chance to get Cooper Flagg, oh, yeah, we can't afford it. They're coming up with that money, don't you think?
Well, I'm just going to tell you this. And the foundation for the basketball program is not anything like the football program. There's one guy that's pretty much bankrolling everything down there. We know this from talking to certain people. But really, the top-tier talent in Ohio hasn't been McDonald's All-Americans lately. And the one that they did get, he's coming next year. He's going to be a really good player. They've got Alex Smith out of Upper Arlington, who's you got to take really
Alex
good.
Smith
I do
a lot.
too. You got to take good players that want to play for Ohio State. You really do, and that's where we're going to have to start doing this whole thing. You look at Thad Matta now; it's a different era. But Thad Matta, when he recruited a kid, they were staying 2-3 years, and then they're going to the NBA. He was sending kids to the NBA. He was having top tier talent. He kept the best players in the state. He was a recruiting machine. Not only the best players in the state, the best players in the Midwest. He got the kids from Indiana. He got the kids from Illinois, and somewhere along the line, and somewhere along the line, we lost that. We lost that. And
Chris Holtman.
Yeah, we knew I go there. So, yeah, interesting subject. All right, guys, let's change gears and go Buckeye football. 14 players drafted. I'm going to read these to you guys, and then I want you to tell me who fell in the right spot. What do you think about that?
Are you going with your glasses, though?
I am going with my glasses, yeah. Mecca Ibuka goes to Tampa Bay.
Great fit.
Donovan Jackson to the Minnesota Vikings.
Great fit.
Tyleek Williams to the Detroit Lions. Josh Simmons to the Kansas City Chiefs, Quinshon Judkins to the Cleveland Browns, Travion Henderson to the New England Patriots, JT Tuimoloau to the Indianapolis Colts, Cody Simon to the Cardinals, Latham Ransom to the Panthers. I love Latham Ransom, by the way. Jack Sawyer to your Pittsburgh Steelers, Ty Hamilton to the Los Angeles Rams, Jordan Hancock to the Buffalo Bills, Denzel Burke to the Cardinals, and Will Howard to the Steelers. Guys, give me 3 or 4 that just fell in the right spot.
Oh, without a doubt. Judkins to the Browns. I think he's going to be an 8-year NFL running back if the Browns use him correctly. He is a big dude. People forget how big he is, and he's got pretty good speed. I love Simmons going to the Chiefs. But the Chiefs just always seem to do the right thing in the first round, right? Yeah. Patty Pat was just running around in the Super Bowl, so what do? You get the most athletic left tackle in the draft, and then Emeka Ibuka. But I would argue that no matter where Emeka Ibuka went, was going to be a great fit, right?
I love that kid.
Just a complete guy, an absolute team guy, blocks and blocks, goes over the middle, makes catches, can go up the seam. He is fantastic. Him and Baker Mayfield are going to be a great tandem.
I like that.
Yeah, for me, I think the most glaring one, we already kind of touched on it, but Jack Sawyer to Pittsburgh, I think, is an absolute home run.
He's a Pittsburgh Steeler, right?
I think everything about that feels right, and that is going to be a good fit. I like Denzel Burke to Arizona as well. I think that they got a good thing going. They got a defensive-minded
Danny hates that kid.
they got a defensive-minded head coach over there. I think they got things going in the right direction. He's going to have less pressure put on him because of where he was drafted. I mean, it is a little bit hard to swallow that, you're talking about a kid who a year ago could have been a top 10 pick, and now he's getting drafted in the 6th, 7th round. That's a tough one to see. So the talent is still there. Arizona could have got an absolute home run at the back end of the draft with him.
Yeah.
And then I'll give you some credit. I think, not just Jack Sawyer, but I think Will Howard going to Pittsburgh is a good fit. I think Will Howard is a Pennsylvania guy.
Oh, yeah.
He's at home. You could tell it meant a lot to him being drafted by the Steelers. He's going to get to go. And there's a lot of unsettledness over there, and there's still some questions about what's going to happen with Pittsburgh and what's going to happen in that quarterback room. And maybe he gets to learn under Aaron Rodgers for a little bit. Maybe there's going to be some playing time available to him as well. You just don't know. So I think it's a good spot for him. I think he'll get a chance to learn. And Mike Tomlin is a smart guy. He's been around. Listen, there are 31 other teams that would take him tomorrow if he became available.
I got a couple of Steeler fans would say, please take him. That's for sure.
But
the piggyback on your Denzel Burke thing, right? I think if the Arizona's smart with him and they use him as an inside nickel corner early in his career, I think that'll allow him to flourish. If they put him right away on the outside corner and they'd like to play a lot of man out in Arizona and he gets run by a couple times because the psyche of a DB is very fragile. We saw this at Oregon. I think he's going to be fantastic if they treat him the right way.
Guys, Donovan Jackson at Minnesota, I think, is an absolute home run because he can play multiple positions on the line. I love Quinshon Judkins. He reminds me of Kareem Hunt on the field. He can run through the tackles. He's got speed. I love the pick for the Browns. I really do. And the other one, Denzel Burke, you said it earlier. Guys, he's going home. That's where he's from, is Arizona.
Right.
And how comfortable is that going to be for him to be in his own backyard? Now, sometimes that doesn't always work out. But for Denzel, he had a rough year last year. And I say that he had a really good year other than the Oregon game, but they just played it over and over and over and over. You look at his time in the playoffs, he was fantastic.
Well, they were 8 of 8 for 195 yards against them, so I can understand why.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But he's a quality guy. He's a 4-year starter at Ohio State. How many people can say that? Not really. Orlando Pace, Andy Katzenberg. There's not a lot of them.
Could have left, right? But didn't. He wanted to stay around and be part of the solution, was one of the leaders that took him to the national title. I love the kid. I think he's going to be good.
And Cody Simon. We talked about Cody Simon. I love Cody Simon. I thought I thought he brought resurgence to the linebacker room that we haven't seen in years. Now, part of that is who we got coaching the linebackers now. But he had a great season this year. And, man, you look down the list, and there's not a bad football player there. Now, they're going to be in some bad situations, I think, some of them, but most of them are landing in really good spots. I hope Ty Hamilton does good for the Rams. I hope that Jordan Hancock has a long career with the Bills, but we'll see how
I
that
thought that
goes.
was a good landing spot for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
If Cody Simon in 8 years from now is one of the top 10 linebackers in the NFL, I would not be surprised.
No, right.
He just has that mentality. And everybody says, he's not that good of an athlete. But when you go down to Ohio State and they have the record boards outside their weight room, his name shows up all the time. So he's a much better athlete than people give him credit for.
Aiden Hutchinson's going to love Tyleek Williams on that defensive line.
Yes.
I can promise you that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can promise you that.
I think another one that gets overlooked is JT. I think that I think because of how the season ended and the way that the college football playoff went and the big play that Jack Sawyer had, Jack Sawyer started to get all of the attention again. But for the entire year, even going into last season, all the talk was how are they going to contain JT? And Jack Sawyer could have a big year because all the attention goes on JT. So he got lost a little bit in that shuffle, but I think people forget how good he was.
Yeah, he was fantastic. He's going to be a great pro, very quick, has got an incredible inside spin move. He's going to make tackles just lose their minds. When they measured him at the combine, did they measure him at the base of his head or with his hair? Because he'd be like the first 7-foot defensive end.
Guys, another point, the Buckeyes didn't lose a player to the transfer portal. The football team.
Absolutely amazing.
The basketball team's lost a ton. The football team didn't lose. What's that about? I just want to say this. I think it's two things. I think the culture that Ryan Day has created and the foundation that the former players have created. The culture, guys want to be there, guys want to be developed, guys want to go to the NFL. We have some of the best coaches in all the country, and the foundation steps up. When guys get ready to walk out and Ryan Day says, look, we can't lose this kid, he's getting paid. That's the name of the game now. And I think those two factor huge.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it is at this point. The reality of it is because we've seen national championship teams get blown up before because now all of a sudden NIL money's coming in like crazy, and these guys are like, well, I got to get paid. But with Ohio State, they won the national title, but then they also backed it up. They kept the guys that they needed to keep. As you mentioned, I mean, if Ryan Day says this guy's got to be here, the foundation's like, okay, we'll find a way to make them be here. Now, I'm sure there are some guys who probably could have went and made a little bit more money, and I'm sure them staying came down to having conversations with Ryan Day and some of the people in-house. And they just watched 14 guys get drafted. If you want to go make more money than what you can make right now, stay here. We'll develop you. We'll give you that opportunity.
Well, Ryan Day in the recruiting always talk about, of course, NIL is going to be one of the factors. Right. But if a family That's one of the first things that they bring up. Mm-hmm. They said that this kid's probably not here for Ohio State, right? So they do a great job with that culture fit. And it's one of those few programs where everybody always says, oh, the brotherhood, right? It actually means something there, right?
It does.
You saw the emotion in the kid's eyes, and how many times during that national title run, we want one more time together. We want one more time together. They just want to play football together, one more game. So when you have that brotherhood, you don't want to be that guy that breaks that brotherhood up, right? You're counting on each other. And it's Ohio State, right? Right? It's Ohio State. Yeah. So I might take a little bit less money because I'm at Ohio State, right, as opposed to going to play in Manhattan, Kansas, and they're going to pay me more money. Being at Ohio State and getting developed, you're going to get your money on the back end.
We've never seen the brotherhood mean more than the final 4 games of the year.
Yep.
Because they were flat out down and out. Mm-hmm. There was no chance of winning a national championship. And the way they came together and what they stood for in those final 4 games, incredible.
And it got started at the Horseshoe when they played Tennessee, where the 3 of us were there. That was amazing.
Yes, with you, me, and Nate. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It was awesome.
You had your I Love Will Howard t-shirt.
I was so cold, but you stood there and you kept hugging me saying, "It's okay, Danny boy, it's okay." And you looked at me with those sad eyes and you had tears running down your face. I just patted your little head and said, "It'll be okay, Timmy."
Like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Have a jelly bean, Timmy.
no, what I was going to say is you talked about that brotherhood and they have the right leaders, right? And that's what Spencer was talking about when we were talking with him and Tim. It's the leaders that were in that locker room. They had the right guys that stepped up, young, old, it doesn't matter. You know, Caleb Downs was one of the biggest voices, he said. You know, we know with Jack Sawyer and all these guys. And I think that is I think we're going to look back in 4, 5, 6 years as the pivotal moment in Ohio State football here in the 2020s going into the 2030s, because I think that loss to Michigan did something.
It did.
You saw Jack Sawyer on the field afterwards. I think from that moment forward, you will see a different, it's hard to say different Ohio State team because the history and everything that they've accomplished, but there's just this feel that things will be different now. And I think you'll be able to point to that moment when it started.
One of us at this table said, and I'm going to give Miles all the credit, and before he said it, I thought, you're out of your mind. He said the Buckeyes are going to win 3 national titles in the next 8 years. Now, that was before the Michigan game.
Yeah.
I believe it. I really do.
I said right here, too, if they beat Tennessee, they're going to beat Oregon. And then watch out. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember. And Nate, that night at the game, he didn't believe we were going to win that game.
No.
Yeah, that's exactly how it all went down. Word for word.
One last thing I want to touch on about that, though, is in a day and age where people are kind of afraid to express their faith, this Buckeye group is not.
No,
absolutely not.
Good for them. Good for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that I think has brought everybody together, and it's part of that culture, right? Guys like G. Scott, who really stepped forward, Travion Henderson, and anytime they get a chance, they give the glory to God and say, this is part of what we're doing.
Travion's going to be a monster at New England. He's going to be a monster. He's so
if he's
good.
healthy.
Yeah. Guys, the Buckeyes added 2 players this week. Now, I firmly believe that both of these are probably going to be backups, and I'll tell you why. When you look at Justin Terry, who comes from West Virginia, 6'5", 338, kids out of Pickerington, Ohio, that's going to be tough to crack that starting offensive line. So he's in that too deep, but I think he's going to be good. And then Bo Atkinson, the 6'6", 240-pound defensive end. If you didn't have Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson coming back, he'd probably start. But my goodness, what a 3-man rotation that's going to be on the defensive line.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head right there. It will be a 3-man rotation because that's a lot of snaps to play, especially if you're planning to go 16 weeks and win another national championship. You can't have just 2 guys being pass rushers and being defensive ends. I really like Bo Atkinson. He is a big dude, man, and his ability. Danny loves this one. He's twitchy.
He's got twitchy hips. Man, look at his tape. He jumps off the tape.
Okay, he had 7.5 sacks at North Carolina, but 40 pressures too. So that tells you he is making an impact on that quarterback. Justin Terry, he will be a guy that will play as that tackle if someone's hurt. Otherwise, he's shouldn't really get on the field. But they like him because he's got several years of eligibility. I think next year is when his turn. It might be a starter.
Don't you wonder how a kid from Pickerington gets away from Ohio State?
They under-recruited him.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously, I think this goes back to a conversation that we've had previously on this show. There may have been somebody who was in charge of offensive linemen,
Justin Fry,
who wasn't a big fan of recruiting.
Bingo.
And so we saw a lot of guys who left, who we were like, how did they leave?
Some guys go to Michigan.
And then as soon as you get somebody who's into recruiting now we're getting linemen from Ohio. Now we're getting guys back, right? So I think that goes to more of who's running things now compared to who was before. I like the move. Listen, if we learned nothing this year from watching this team, it was that we can never have enough offensive line depth. We spent so much time talking about that offensive line and whether or not they were going to be able to hold up and where guys were going to play and the injuries and all these things. Look, bring them all in. If you're telling me that a 6'5", 338 guy is going to be a backup, cool. That's fine. Right. Let's go.
So he's a big dude.
Yeah, he is. Guys, are you sure you won't go to prom with me? I'm going to throw it out there again.
I have to talk to my mom and dad
Okay,
first.
talk to your mom and dad.
I don't talk to anybody.
Dad said I could use the car.
Absolutely not. Nope, I'm holding out for somebody way more popular.
You've been watching The 3 Wise Men. Thanks, Lima.